back to another Dice Tower review. My name is Zee Garcia.
I'm Milla Cleghorn.
Today we're going to be taking a look at a roll and write called Dice Colony here, in which we are going to be pulling out some dice, rolling those, making symbols on a planet, and we are putting out minerals and water and springing forth life, I guess is what's happening.
I guess, is that what it is?
Water, life, minerals, plants.
So we're not finding it, we're
This
planting.
one's plants.
That's plants. Is that what that means?
Plants.
Oh, those are means.
So that's what we're doing. It's a roll and write, okay? Let me show you what's going on in it. We'll come on back. We'll tell you what we think of it. To set up the game, each player is going to take one of these sheets and a paper. We are going to draw in some starting positions on the map. So with this being the reference point, we drew in these, or each player will have a different setup. We're going to put that aside now, and then we shuffle up and put out 3 of these objective cards, of which there are quite a few. All right, so all of these, we can now put them aside. We've got the 3 we're going to play with on the table there. We're going to be playing over 5 rounds. Each of those rounds has 5 turns as well. So here's what that turn entails. Whoever the player whose turn it is going to draw 3 dice from the back. We're going to roll these dice. The players are going to utilize one of those dice. Everyone will do that, and they can use the same one. You do not remove it from the pool when you do so. And then once that's done, one of these dice will be set aside by the player who rolled them. That one is pulled out. The rest go back in the bag, and the bag is handed to the next player, who is going to shake it up, bring out 3 dice, and do the same thing again. Roll those. All the players will take one of them, then that player that rolled them will remove one, and so on. When 5 of these have been removed, that's the 5 turns, and then we can cross this out here, and it is the next turn, so we take them all and throw them back in the bag. All right? So what are we doing in the game? How are we scoring points? Well, you're going to be scoring points from a few different things. Every time you have some dice that come out there, you are going to be transferring one of those to the planet surface here. So let me go ahead and do that. Grab one of each for the sake of our example here, okay? So I'm going to roll those. Wow, look at that. Let's do that again. That's better. I'm going to do that, put them right there, and explain what's going on. So we roll them, and then I'm going to pick one of these. There are 3 different dice colors that you see here. There's also a black one, which you've seen. This black one here. We're going to come back to that one. This one's a bad die. So these 3 represent 3 different types of things. So this is minerals for red, vegetation for green, and then water for blue there. I'm going to select which one I want. Every player will do this. And I'm going to draw it somewhere on here, using this as my guide. The color will be obviously the type, and then the number is its orientation off of whatever I'm drawing it. So every new symbol has to be next to a previous symbol. And again, the number is where it is in relation to that one. If I wanted to, for example, utilize the red one here, I'm going to be drawing in a triangle, and I'm going to be drawing it to up and to the left of whatever other one I'm choosing to use as its starting point. Let's say I do this one, for example. I could put it right there and put my triangle for minerals right there. All right, once everybody's done that, again, we are going to remove them. The player who rolled them is going to remove one, and that's going to do it. So the black one, when that comes out, in an example like so, every player must use the black one. The black one is going to be an X. That means it represents an area that is inhospitable. We are going to put it somewhere in relation again using the 5 which it rolled. So I might do it there in relation to that one. And then everybody still picks one of these. And the black one can never be the one that gets removed. There's only 1 black one, but 3 green, 3 blue, and 3 red in the bag. As you add in new symbols to the board, you are going to make groups of them whenever you choose to do so. As soon as you add a symbol is when you decide if you want to group those symbols together, to outline them into a cluster. So for example, I've got these 2 here, and let's say I add 1 there, one of those minerals. I can, now that there are 3, I can go ahead and bring them together, or I could wait, but I have to decide as soon as I add one. So let's say I'm going to put 1 there as well. I'll go ahead and enclose this grouping of minerals like so. And there are, in here, I'm just kind of rushing this, but you know, so give you an idea of what's going on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those. And if we look down here, we see that 5 of them is going to be 8 points at the end of the game. Okay. If I make it a group of 6, I could have waited, and then when I added the 6th, that's when I can do it. Again, you have to do it when you add a symbol. The new symbol must be part of it. Upon enclosing a group like that, which you can do with any of these types, you can enclose it, you're going to be adding a new symbol, life, around that grouping. I just made a group of 5, and this down here is my chart for how many life symbols I'm going to add. If it's 5 or more that I enclosed, I'm adding 3 life, and I have to go around this shape somewhere. So perhaps I'll do 1 life there. I could do it adjacent to that or not. I could put 1 up here, 1 life there, and 1 more somewhere. All right. Now, ideally, I do want those to be next to each other as well because they also can be grouped up, enclosed, and scored. But life being enclosed does not generate further life. Okay. So making a group like this of the life symbol doesn't give me further symbols of that type. So that's what I'm doing. I'm grouping things together and scoring them at the end of the game. I'm also scoring for a couple of different things, okay? These objectives over here, the first person to have 10 of the little trees, which is what that is going to get 5 points. And then we're going to flip this over, and the next person to do it will get 3, and everybody who continues to do it, in fact, will get 3. This is for the first person to make that shape. It doesn't matter what's in there, it just means those symbols filled in. And then this one is for the first person to make a group of 6 of water. They will get 4 points. Flip this over. Everybody else will get 3 if they manage to do it. So you're going to score that, and those 3 scores would go right here. Okay. If you have a group that gets made with a symbol in the center that is empty, you're going to fill that in with one of these little settlements, a little house. So for example, let's say I've got water right here, and maybe I put in some vegetation right there, maybe another vegetation, and I had some life that sprung up right there because I enclosed something next to it, and I put that in there. And then perhaps I had to put one of these bad X's right there. Well, as soon as something like that happens in here, immediately I have to draw in one of these little settlements. And that settlement is going to score at the end of the game 2 points for every different type of symbol around it, with the X's not providing any points. So in this case, 2, 4 points, 6 points. This one adding nothing, all right? And I'm going to score that right here. I'm also going to, as you can see there, and the life ones, figure out what my score is from groups I made. And then also the X's, I want to make sure that those inhospitable places don't become a clump. I want to have them by themselves. If they're by themselves, they don't harm me. If I have a group of them, of even 2, then each one is negative 2 points. So if this is the only place I did it at the end of the game, I'm going to lose 4 points for that, and I would mark that right there. All right. The last thing to explain is these energy spaces. Anytime I put a symbol in there, I'm going to put a circle in one of these. And now I have the ability to use that energy to modify an upcoming roll for myself. Let's say, for example, that I've got these 3 dice. I rolled them, and I'm going to be using one of those. I can do one of 2 things by spending that energy. I can modify the color of the die to be a different color I need. So, for example, let's say I want to make a group of... Okay, let me do this, in fact. Boom. Okay, let's say I want to make a group of vegetation right here. And let's say also that this is taken for our example here. I want a group of vegetation right here. I could choose this 4, and I can make that green by crossing out my energy here, and then I could do it there. Right? So it's green, and it's 4, which means, facing that way. Or the other option is you can change the value of a die up or down 1. In this case, I could do it with that green. I could, same thing, cross this out and take that from a 5 to a 4, which would have given me the same result. All right? So there you go. That is what's going on in the game. Figure out your final score by adding all these things together, subtracting any points you lost from there. Whoever has the highest point is the winner. Okay, so Dice Colony has a great cover. That's one thing that definitely caught my eye. It's just partly why I was attracted by it. It also is, I believe, a Spanish game, and it only had rules in here in Spanish and another language I don't recognize. It's not French. That might be Portuguese. I'm not sure.
Portuguese.
So I had to read the Spanish ones there. But again, the cover was captivating. I like roll and writes, though I have to admit I'm a little bit burnt out on roll and writes. There are quite a few of them. It's definitely a crowded genre, no matter how you measure that. Mm-hmm. So I figured, okay, let me give it a try. The theme here, and then we should probably go ahead and start there, because honestly, the look, if it can so be called, stops at the cover.
It does.
You know, the sheet of paper is purely functional, though I am glad the symbols you draw are pretty simple symbols. But we'll come back to, you know, kind of how it looks when you get going. As far as the theme here and what it is you are doing, for me, I wasn't really getting that sort of, I mean, in fact, and the intro, you were like, oh, I guess that is what you're doing. I didn't really have that sort of life springing forth, terraforming a planet kind of feel. That wasn't coming through for me.
Right. No, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, I see it now, I guess. Because if you get the right elements surrounded an area, that's why you put a colony there. Because now you have what it needs and it's going to thrive in more points. Like, oh, right. I see it. But this is only after a couple different plays and having to think about it. You know, it definitely is pretty themeless.
It is, right. It's like group stuff together that's alike and avoid the crosses, which are bad points. Right. Don't group them up. Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. You know, so that part didn't really come through for me. As far as gameplay itself, mechanically, I think there's a couple of interesting things in here. I like the idea that this has sort of a reverse bag building aspect to it. Mm-hmm. I do like that. I like that you pull out your 3 dice, you roll them. You might have to take the bad one, you know. Then you use one of those dice, and then you cull, so to speak, one of those dice. You put one aside that won't go back into the bag. You kind of change the odds for the colors that come up.
Right.
You know, it's an interesting idea. It's a cool sort of mechanism. Mechanically, I'm like, oh, I read that, or you tell me that, and I'm like, oh, that sounds clever. So I like that one. I like this idea of you make a group, and then life springs up around that group. And you are trying to have multiple groups spring up life that it itself becomes its own group. That's a clever idea, mechanically, I think. Go ahead.
I think as well as I like the idea that you get to choose when you group them together.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's, good. You know, because you talk about it bringing the life, but you want to wait and hope the right thing comes up to increase that, or depending on the goals for that round, do you want to go ahead and do it earlier? Yes, it's less points, but you get more life. Yeah, I mean, just there's a lot in that decision, I think. I think that's probably one of the strongest things in the game for me is that decision space of when do you group them together and bring out that extra life, you know, your positions, you're pushing your luck depending on how you manipulated the bag, that kind of stuff. So speaking of that, I think that is the most interesting decision space of the game.
There's also the idea that you making large groups of the same type and having the little huts be surrounded by different things, those two are at odds with one another. Yeah. And that also can be a nice, interesting, you know, point of contention that you're sort of fighting with yourself. Do I make a messy group with an empty space in the middle? Bam, it gets filled. I get 8 points for that. Or, yeah, a little hut will go in here, but it's only going to be worth 4 points because I've only got, it's like water, and a couple of trees. So you want to kind of decide which way you want to go with that. You know, again, that's interesting. There's a little push and pull there. Ultimately, though, I had a couple of problems with this game that are going to translate to a fairly low score from me. And that is, the main two things is, first, I think the game is a little long for what it offers.
I would agree with
that.
that.
I think 5 rounds of 5 turns each feels long. It just kind of felt redundant quickly. I was like, okay, this is dragging out.
Right.
Every time I played it dragged out. I played solo, that dragged out. And then the other one was the game really, for me, lacked highs and lows. There was just there's no excitement in the game. I found it to be Very bland. Does it function mechanically? Yes. Is everything sound? Yes. Is it fun to play? I don't think so. I think this game is too bland. I don't think this game offers any, for lack of a better word, I'm sorry, interest. It doesn't offer any interest.
I think for me, maybe it sounds like I probably liked it a little bit more than you. I thought that it didn't necessarily bring the excitement that you're talking about. It didn't, but it did have some difficult decisions and some tension that came because of those. You're like, oh, do I take this and hope I get that, or this and hope I get that? All right, let me look at the pool. And so you had it had that push your luck, but with a little bit more information. So you're still not pushing your luck, but kind of making a choice that's going to change your strategy. I mean, there was one point specifically that I remember, and it was my turn, and I was the one that was going to be removing one of the dice, you know, and it was, and the person I was playing with was like, oh, hold on, I could make two choices here, but I really want to know, like, what you're going to take away, you know, and it was like, oh, well, I'm not going to tell you, obviously, you know, and I ended up taking the one away that they wanted, and it was like, oh, dang, you know, so I think to me it is those little bit of, it does bring attention more than it brings excitement, which kind of gives, I will agree, it's not that, oh, yay, exciting, you know, that kind of stuff, but it does have a good, a little bit more of a push and pull, is what I felt when I was playing.
Okay. I don't know if I don't think I agree with that. I wish there was something a little more, just more highs and lows. Yeah, the bad die that forces you to put X's in there sucks, right? I mean, and you're like, oh no, this is going to block something. But rarely did I find myself at crossroads like that. Rarely was there a moment where I could sort of throw my arms up and go, oh no, or it's very rare that I felt something hit me or I made a brilliant play and I felt like I made a brilliant play. Like, nailed it. I did something that makes me feel clever. This game at no point manages to pull that wool over my eyes and make me think that I did something clever, even though it's really just the game design. This one doesn't have that for me. And at this point, in such a crowded genre of games, one that is slightly too long and doesn't have moments of cleverness, it's just not, it's going to drown, you know, for me. So, unless you want to add anything else, I'm going to go ahead and jump to my final thoughts.
No, go ahead.
Here.
Yeah, I'll wrap mine up in my thoughts.
For me, this is I'm going to come down at a 5. This is, again, it's an average game, and 5 is average. I think it functions. I think if you have no other game to play and you want to play this one, you're going to enjoy this game. I think if you are looking for a roll and write, I have about 24 I'd like to recommend to you before I recommend this one, unfortunately, that are going to give you a more thematic experience if this is what hooked you. A better sci-fi game if the dice colony planet colonization thing is what hooked you. A better grouping game if what you like is making groups, and so on, and so on, and so on. This one just didn't do any one of the things it tries to do the best for me, you know, and that's not even the main thing, because I've given high scores to games that aren't the best at what they do, of course. What it does didn't captivate me.
Right.
So that's where I'm at.
I am coming in a little bit higher. I'm going to come in at a 6.5 for this one. Not quite to where I would recommend it. What it came down to me was, I do agree that there are more fun ones out there and other ones that I would go to before this, and that's why I wouldn't necessarily jump to that recommendation.
Right.
However, if somebody came to me with this and was like, hey, I really like this game, or I really want to play this game, I wouldn't say no either. You know, and so it's kind of that, like, I'm not going to recommend it, but it's good enough that I'm always happy to play it. You know, I do feel the game overstays its welcome, so it would be a 30-minute, it takes that full 30 minutes, you know, 4 rounds or maybe less options. You know, maybe you don't pull 3 dice, you pull 2, something like that, I think would have helped tightened it a little bit. But ultimately, I did find myself with some what I felt, I do agree that it never made you feel clever. But it did give me that high of like, oh my gosh, good, I made the right choice. And so it did give me that little bit of, you know, endorphins, you know, there, where it's like, oh good, yes, that worked out. Or, oh, that's crushing, that didn't work out, you know, bummer. Hold on, let me shift. And so it's one of those, I definitely found it, I didn't dislike my play experience. And I would absolutely play it if somebody wanted to. It's just not one that I'm going to recommend. I think that it brought in a lot of variability with the different goals, enough enough things were at odds that I think it has legs. You know, because sometimes, like you were saying, putting different things around one area for your colony versus having big groups of things, those are at odds. Sometimes the goals you're going for are at odds, even with that in as well. And I think those odds gives it enough legs that I would always play it, but not quite recommend it.
All right, there you go, folks. So best score here is 6.5 out of 10. That is Dice Colony. And that's going to do it for us, everybody. My name is Zee Garcia.
I'm Milla Cleghorn.
We're going to see you on the next one. Take care.